There's one thing I want you to take into consideration when you are looking at what I have here. To my family that do not like us stating that Israel is in America, I'm sorry, love. You really got to dig deep. And there's some layers that you guys miss when you're doing your research when we talk about here. And that's that Chaldean language that we spoke prior to colonization, right? You have to take that into consideration. Because when Columbus came here, right? And I'm not reading any of these things. You can read them. You can stop them. You can read them for yourself. I'm just speaking facts. He came with Chaldean interpreters. He wasn't the only one. A lot of them brought them here. But what they stated was the language that we were speaking here is far older than the Chaldean that they knew. Mind you, your history books told you Chaldean was a dead language, that nobody ever spoke it anymore. The last known Hebraic roots language was Aramaic, right? But what they don't tell you is the people in this country prior to colonization was speaking this language. And they brought interpreters with them that did. But the part that people don't know what Christopher Columbus' motive and idea was for, his goal was to go to Israel and convert the 10 tribes of Israel into Catholicism or Christianity, because that was Christianity in his time. They hadn't even had the change in the Christian doctrine, because this was before King Henry VIII. Because remember, he also challenged the church before the split. So when we're looking at the time period here, there's a lot that was happening. Our history books never tell us that for over 100 years, all of Europe was looking for Israel. They looked for it in Africa and could not find it. So for all you Israel is in Africa roots, you missing that part, because that's exactly the case. And Columbus wasn't from Spain. He was from Italy, which is right above where? Palestine, because that's what the hell it is on the map. It's never been called Israel until the 40s when they established it. But if you steal or remove Israel from the map, you got to replace it somewhere. The piece y'all is missing here is the Paleo-Hebrew logic. That's something no one could ever change. Those words, Paleo, Hebrew, logic. Because when you break it down from the Paleo-Hebrew logic, you get something completely different. The thing you're missing with that is when we break things down from the Paleo-Hebrew logic, there are no longer proper nouns, adjectives, and verbs, and adverbs. Because they superimposed places and things in the space. But I'm assuming Christopher Columbus was really great at that. And because he was a numbers guy, but he also read pattern logic. And I think the reason why I'm so great at it is because I went to school to be a psychologist. The shit they learn and teach your ass in that space, you learn a lot of shit. And one of the things that is so important to do my work is pattern logic. It's those words and phrases and things that pop out at you that you cannot deny. So when they told us that white people came on these shores, as a lie, because Columbus wasn't white. You can call him mulatto. He was mixed, but he wasn't white based on the standards that they go by to determine who was black or white. No. And the telltale sign, too, here is this. When you go look at the old maps, you'll never find the word Asia anywhere because they didn't use that term. The term they had for Asia in the time period was Cathay. And Cathay was on the maps of America. So when Christopher Columbus said he was going to Asia, goddamn, he was going in the right direction because Cathay was on the American maps. But here's a kicker for you for this, right? Here's the kicker. Marco Polo went to Asia, remember that? And a lot of scholars have a lot of discrepancy of his writings. But if you ask your AI this one question, if we superimpose the travels of Marco Polo onto the Americas, which one fits best? The place we know as Asia today or the Americas? I bet you it will literally tell you that it fits the interior of the Americas that far more than it fits the interiors of the place we have known today as Asia. What you don't know is this. They move shit around, goddamn. Peep it. Even in World War II, after Hitler, there were places still bearing the name Negro on it. Montenegro. There were a couple of places. You know what they did? They took them off the map and they divided it amongst the allies of the time period. So some of those countries got ate up. That changed the map too, didn't it? Yeah, it did, goddamn. So when you have Benjamin Franklin stating that all the world is full of swarthy and tawny people and the pure Saxons, pure, note the term. See how those words and phrases pop out? Pure Saxons didn't have a land of their own, so they took America for themselves. What the fuck you think that means? That means there was no white nation ever until they took America for themselves. When you go and start looking at these phrases and maps I'm talking about, you're going to find something very interesting. So Columbus's journey to the Americas was to convert the children of Israel. Where did he end it up after he got enough money to go on that voyage? Well, goddamn, he ended up in South America. That's where these pictures are about. Also, while you're using that Paleo Hebrew logic, you could throw them names of those nations of Psalms 83 in there. The gang of people that said they was going to, take America, or let me say, take Israel and no longer have its name being attached to it. Something very interesting here. Whenever you read about Israel in the Old Testament, it refers to it being in between two bodies of water. Well, if we look at the Levant, it don't match. You know why? Because after they came over there and did the shit they did, they created the Suez Canal because there was no other body of water there. But if we look at the Americas, it fits the narrative perfectly. But do you know what's really interesting? If you put the name they gave for Israel let me say America in the Paleo Hebrew logic, the term Tamaria. Do you know what it means in Paleo Hebrew logic? The land between two waters. When you put the Nile in there, in Paleo Hebrew logic, do you know what it tells you? It's a place where waters flow very heavily, like fast to the point, and it's divided into two portions. Exactly the way the Mississippi runs. But I'll hit you again with the word Mississippi itself in the original name, Mississippi. The father of rivers. But in, I believe it's Jeremiah, it calls the Pharaoh the king of rivers. But when you break that down in that Paleo Hebrew logic, you're going to get something else. And it told you, when it described the Nile, that it was a multi-river system. That it wasn't just one river, large river. That large river had multiple rivers attached to it. So where the fuck is that over there in the Levant? Because when we talk about geography, biblical geography, which most of y'all never pay attention to when you read in that word, this is also the same reason why most atheists will tell you that the New Testament and the Old Testament contradict each other, but most people don't comprehend the fact that the New Testament was written by non-Hebrew people, which was a violation to the people themselves. So if you stole the book, meaning the Old Testament scribes and so forth, and then you create a whole new book, but you are not attached to the people, it ain't even going to look the same. That ain't even rocket science. It's just basic, common, deductive reasoning. Because if you understood that the people that was being engaged with were the only people allowed to write the writings, and you got another group of people stealing the writings and rewriting them again, you got something else completely different. And if you Christian and you mad at what I'm saying, you better go look up a cat named Marcion Sinopo. When you look him up, they look to make him look like a heretic. But there's something very important that man stated. And that was the God of the New Testament and the God of the Old Testament aren't the same gods. Yeah, there were no New Testament books ever until Marcion wrote them. Then you have Tertullian coming in and giving y'all the Trinity. But see, y'all don't know. This is why they don't teach you biblical history. And then y'all get mad at people who actually study to comprehend it. They stole the writings. But I'm going to hit you with one more. The Cherokee people said, we had the book. These were our laws. We lost the credit for them. Multiple indigenous people told you that the Old Testament was already theirs. But how you know what they are saying is correct puts you right in that Paleo Hebrew logic. You can never throw that away. If you are studying anything about this nation, of the people who are here prior to now, because Paleo Hebrew was all up and through and still is all up and through here. But I'll also add you one more piece. And that is this. The Vatican took all and a whole lot of our stuff. And it's written in their archives. This is the part you miss. You can never throw out the Hebrew concept of the Americas. My people who keep saying that we can't say this. We are also the only people who were expecting an invading nation to come to it. But we also knew one day they would leave. If you read those biblical prophecies in the Old Testament, because the Revelations ain't got no motherfucking relevance, period. Because our people didn't write it. So if you're looking to understand anything about what's to take place in our land, you better go there and look. That's the place you got to look. Because you can never remove the Hebrew connotations to the people of this land. Because they were here. And they weren't given us to, it wasn't given to us by them. We already had it long before they came here. But that's a story for another day. Because stay tuned, goddamn. Stay tuned. I got a book I'm constructing. As you see, this work is immaculate. Don't play around with it. Stay tuned. Because it's time for the truth to come out. And that's a truth they can't hide. And that's the truth they scared of. Message.